It has been a life of misery for the last of the internally displaced, stuck in tents that are now falling apart. The cold, the hot sun and other vagaries of the weather have become their permanent companion as they await government plans to resettle them to fall into place. More than 4 years after the event, and still, thousands of Kenyans remain internally displaced. The question, even from their guest house, being, did the internally displaced become a cash cow for unscrupulous Kenyans? It is to Parliament which approved billions in spending for everything from funerals and counselling to water bills and land acquisitions that we first turn to for answers. Darago MP Jeremiah Kioni is just one of the many representatives who hosts IDPs in their constituencies, and straight off the bat, he and other observers agree that the IDP problem has a bearing on the economy.
It's a drain to the economy because every other time you have to set aside 1, 2, 3 billion shillings to try and sort out this problem.
Looking at these IDPs, it is difficult to discern that the government has spent nearly 8 billion shillings on land purchases, compensation, reconstruction of schools, provision of farm inputs, and so on. By December the 31st of the year 2010, the government had allocated a total of 7.9 billion shillings on the internally displaced. While 2.9 billion of this had been allocated to the Lands Ministry, the majority, some 5 billion, went to the Special Programs Ministry. Close to 3 billion was spent as startup funds for IDPs who received 10,000 shillings or 25,000 shillings, depending on the nature of their displacement. A large chunk of the money was also spent on medical care, counseling, feeding, and building materials, which would make it difficult to properly account for.
The government itself has openly admitted that the money was misappropriated. Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, when he had his meeting in Nakuru and he was asked about that issue.
This is not any speculation anymore because we have cases. We did complain about misuse of the funds that were set aside. We are aware that a number of people are taken to court, and we would still expect the government to do more.
Over the period, a total of 2.9 billion shillings has been set aside for buying land to resettle IDPs who were displaced from their farms. This is broken down as some 1.4 billion shillings in the 2009-2010 budget and 1.5 billion in the 2010-2011 budget. The Lands Ministry has either spent or committed most of the money. While it is seeking more money in the supplementary budget, the caveat is that this will be used solely to resettle Mau Forest evictees.
If we politicians stop politicizing the issue of IDPs, we can settle the IDPs as soon as possible.
By and large, I think the government still needs to up their efforts so that we get all these Kenyans in a situation where they can fend for their own livelihood.
The bottom line being that continuous efforts to fix the genesis of this recurring problem is what is currently needed, and needed fast. This is especially so bearing in mind that another election is looming.
Surely, if there was a commitment to find out the culprits, it should not take a couple of weeks to get the culprits as to who misappropriated that money.
Never again should we allow ourselves to get this low in our thinking, because it is really an embarrassment to us. How we got to where we are is something that will mean a bad mark for us.
And as the sun sets over yet another night in the tent, the IDPs wait to become political fodder for yet another election. Peter Kabaketi and Prime.